The inn stood quietly on the edge of the mountain city, its stone walls catching the silver light of the full moon. Most of the guests had gone to sleep, but one figure still lingered. Tomasz, a young scholar traveling for his studies, could not rest. He had spent the day walking through crowded markets and noisy halls of learning, yet his mind was restless. To calm himself, he stepped onto the wide balcony that overlooked the valley. The air was cool, touched with the faint scent of pine. The city's lights shimmered below like fallen stars, but it was the moon that ruled the night, casting its soft glow across the mountains and rooftops. Tomasz leaned on the balcony rail, breathing deeply, letting the silence of the hour wash over him. Then, he noticed he was not alone. At the far end of the balcony stood a woman, still as a statue, her face lifted toward the moon. Her figure was slim, wrapped in a simple cloak, but there was something unusual about the way she carried herself, graceful, almost otherworldly. Her dark hair caught the moonlight as if it belonged to the night itself. Tomasz hesitated. He was not used to speaking with strangers so suddenly, but something about her presence drew him in. Quietly, he stepped closer. "A fine night," he said, his voice gentle so as not to disturb her too much. The woman turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his. They were deep and steady, as if they held stories far older than she appeared. For a moment, Tomasz felt as though she was studying him, not with suspicion but with a curious warmth. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "Yes," she replied. "The night feels alive under such a moon." Her words carried a strange rhythm, like music spoken carefully. Tomasz found himself smiling. "I did not expect to find anyone else awake at this hour. Most travelers must be tired." "I do not tire easily," she said, almost as if the thought of sleep was foreign to her. Then she asked, "And you? Why do you stand here instead of resting?" Tomasz looked out toward the valley. "My mind is restless. Too many thoughts, too many questions. Sometimes the night answers in ways the day cannot." The woman tilted her head slightly, as though she found his answer unusual but not unkind. "You search for answers in the silence." "Yes," Tomasz said, glancing at her. "It may sound foolish." "Not foolish," she replied. "Brave." The word surprised him. No one had ever called his quiet habits brave. He studied her more closely. Though she spoke plainly, her presence carried a sense of distance, as if she were not entirely part of the world around her. "What is your name?" Tomasz asked. "Ilora," she said after a short pause. He repeated it softly, letting the sound rest on his tongue. "Ilora. I am Tomasz." Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Tomasz. A simple name, but strong. They stood in silence for a while, the moonlight filling the space between them. Tomasz felt strangely at ease, though he had only just met her. It was as if the night itself had arranged this meeting, as if the balcony had been waiting for the two of them to share its quiet secrets. Finally, Tomasz spoke again. "Do you travel often?" Ilora's gaze returned to the sky. "Yes. I have seen many places. Yet, every place feels new." "That must be exciting," Tomasz said. "To see so much." Her eyes softened. "It is not the places that matter. It is the people." Her answer lingered in his mind. Most travelers he had met spoke of landmarks, markets, or treasures. But Ilora spoke of people, and she looked at him as though he might be one of those treasures himself. The night grew deeper, but neither of them moved to leave. The silence between their words was not empty, it was alive, filled with questions unspoken and answers waiting. For Tomasz, the balcony was no longer just a place to clear his thoughts. It had become the stage for something unexpected, something that stirred a quiet thrill in his heart. And though he could not explain why, he sensed that this meeting was only the beginning. The next evening came quickly, though Tomasz felt the hours stretch longer than usual. His thoughts returned again and again to the quiet figure he had met on the balcony. Illyra. The name itself felt like a melody that lingered in his mind. He told himself it had been only a passing meeting, something common for travelers in an inn. Yet, deep inside, he hoped she would be there again. When the moon rose, he found himself walking back to the balcony. The cool night greeted him, soft with whispers of the mountain wind. And there she was, just as before, standing near the railing with her face lifted to the sky. Illyra turned at the sound of his steps. "Tomasz," she said simply, as though she had been expecting him. "You remembered my name," Tomasz replied, smiling lightly. "Of course," she said. "Names are important. They hold a person's story." Tomasz moved closer, leaning on the railing a short distance from her. "And what story do you think mine holds?" he asked, curious. She studied him for a long moment. Her gaze was thoughtful, not sharp. "A seeker," she said at last. "Someone who looks not for wealth or power, but for meaning. You carry questions in your heart." Her words struck him with quiet truth. Few had ever noticed that about him. "You speak as if you know me already." Illyra's lips curved slightly. "Sometimes it is easy to see. Humans, they carry their hearts on their faces, if one learns how to look." The way she said the word humans made Tomasz pause. It was not strange enough to be noticed by everyone, but to him it sounded as if she placed herself slightly apart. He did not ask then, though. Instead, he let the mystery rest between them. To ease the silence, he told her about his travels. He spoke of the noisy markets, the crowded lecture halls, the dusty libraries where he spent hours studying. Illyra listened with a rare intensity, as though each word was a jewel she was afraid to miss. "You remember details," she said when he finished. "The colors, the sounds, the way people speak. Why do you notice such small things?" "Because small things matter," Tomasz said. "A market is not just a place to buy food. It is laughter, arguments, songs, and scents of spices. It is life." Illyra's eyes glowed softly in the moonlight. "That is what I wish to understand," she whispered. "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked away, almost shy. "How humans find beauty in ordinary things. How they can turn moments into memories." Tomasz thought about her words. He realized she was not only listening, she was learning. It made her seem both distant and close at once. "Perhaps," Tomasz said slowly, "it is because we know our time is short. So every little moment feels precious." Illyra turned back to him, her expression unreadable. For a long time, they stood there in silence, only the sound of the wind between them. Then she asked softly, "Do you not fear sadness, Tomasz? If every moment is precious, does it not hurt when they pass away?" He nodded. "Yes. It hurts. But that is part of living. Without sadness, joy would have no meaning. Without loss, love would not feel so deep." Her eyes widened slightly, as though his words had opened a door she had never seen before. She whispered his name as if testing its weight. "Tomasz." The way she said it sent a strange warmth through him. The night stretched on as they spoke about stories, about dreams, about what made a life worth living. Tomasz found himself laughing at her questions so simple yet so deep. Why do humans paint pictures of things they already see? Why do they sing when words would be enough? Why do they cry when it changes nothing? And each time, he tried to answer, though sometimes the only answer he had was, because we must. Because it is who we are. When at last the city bells marked midnight, Tomasz realized hours had passed without his notice. He should have been tired, yet he felt alive in a way he had not felt in years. As he rose to leave, Ilora spoke softly. "Will you come again tomorrow?" Tomasz met her gaze. The moonlight shone in her eyes like a secret calling. "Yes," he said. "I will." And in that moment, the balcony no longer felt like stone and wood. It felt like the beginning of something greater, something written not in books but in hearts. The third night came, and Tomasz found himself waiting for the moon to rise. He tried to distract himself with books in the inn's small reading hall, but the words blurred before his eyes. His thoughts were only of the balcony and the strange, gentle traveler he had come to know. When he stepped outside, the air was crisp, carrying the scent of the mountain pine. The city below was quieter than usual, wrapped in a blanket of calm. On the balcony, Ilora was already there. She turned at his approach, her face lit by the silver glow of the moon. "You came again," she said softly, though her eyes already showed she had expected him. "Of course," Tomasz replied, smiling. "I would not miss this." For a time, they stood together in easy silence, watching the valley. Then, Tomasz spoke. "Ilora, may I ask you something?" She tilted her head slightly. "Yes." "Who are you really? I mean, I know you said you are a traveler. But sometimes, you speak as if you are not one of us." Her gaze shifted to the horizon, where the mountains cut sharp against the night sky. For a long while, she said nothing, and Tomasz began to regret asking. But then she turned back, her expression calm yet serious. "You are right," she said quietly. "I am not as you are." Tomasz frowned. "What do you mean?" Ilora looked at her hands, then back at him. "I come from far away. Not just beyond these mountains or this land. Far beyond what you can see. Beyond the stars." Tomasz felt his breath catch. He had studied stories of the heavens, listened to theories of scholars who dreamed of life beyond Earth, but never had he expected such a truth to stand before him. "You mean, another world?" She nodded once. "Yes. My people live among the stars. We watch, we learn. I was sent here to understand what makes your kind different." His heart beat faster. 100 questions rushed to his mind, but only one escaped his lips. "Why me, then? Why speak to me?" Ilora's gaze softened. "Because you see the world with open eyes. When you speak of markets, you do not see only goods. You see laughter and sorrow. When you speak of time, you understand its weight. You notice the heart of things. That is rare." Tomasz did not know what to say. A part of him wanted to doubt her words, to call it a dream or a trick. Yet, looking at her, he felt no deceit. Her voice carried no pride, only truth. "So, all these nights," Tomasz said slowly, "you have been studying me." "Not studying," Ilora corrected gently. "Learning. And, changing." The last word hung in the air. Tomasz searched her face. "Changing? How?" She stepped closer, her cloak brushing against the railing. "My people live with order. We do not feel deeply. We do not let our hearts guide us. But you, humans, you feel everything. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. You risk pain for love. You risk sadness for joy. I could not understand it at first. But now, her voice trailed off. She seemed to struggle with the next words. Finally, she whispered, "Now I feel it too." Tamash's chest tightened. The thought that she, a being from beyond the stars, could be touched by the same emotions that guided his life, it filled him with wonder. "Illyra," he said quietly, "feelings are not easy. They can break you." "I know," she answered. "And yet, they seem more precious than anything I have ever known." They stood close now, the moonlight spilling over them like a silver veil. Tamash felt as though the whole world had grown silent, leaving only the two of them in its glow. At last, Illyra turned her face upward. "I do not know what my people will say if they learn how much I have changed. But I cannot pretend any more. Not with you." Tamash placed a hand on the railing, steadying himself. His world had shifted in one moment, yet somehow, it felt right. "Then do not pretend," he said softly. "Stay true to what you feel. That is what it means to be human." Her eyes lingered on him, full of something new and fragile, something even she seemed afraid to name. And under the moonlit sky, the balcony became more than stone and wood. It became a bridge between worlds, between hearts, between two lives drawn together by something neither could explain. The days passed, but to Tamash, it was the nights that mattered. Each evening, when the inn grew quiet and the city's noise faded into silence, he returned to the balcony. And each night, Illyra was there, waiting under the wide silver moon. At first, their talks were filled with questions. Illyra asked about human music, about the way people laughed even when nothing seemed funny, about the strange habit of writing words into poems. Tamash tried his best to answer, sometimes with simple explanations, sometimes with only a smile and the words, "because it makes us feel alive." But slowly, their conversations changed. No longer were they only about what made humans strange. They became about what made them, Tamash and Illyra, different from the rest of the world. On one evening, the air was still and clear. Stars crowded the sky, and the valley below was calm. Illyra leaned against the railing, her face turned toward him. "When I first came here," she said softly, "I thought of humans as fragile. You are short-lived, easily broken, full of emotions that can drown you. But now," she paused, as if struggling to find the right words. "Now I see it is not weakness. It is strength." Tamash studied her. "Strength?" "Yes," she said. "To live knowing time is short, and still love. To face sorrow, and still smile. To carry pain, and still hope. That is strength I cannot understand fully, but I feel it when I stand beside you." Her words struck deeply. Tamash had often thought of himself as weak, a man lost in books instead of battles, someone who sought meaning rather than action. Yet here she was, from beyond the stars, saying that what he carried inside him was a kind of strength. "You give me too much credit," Tamash said quietly. Illyra shook her head. "No. You give yourself too little." The way she spoke made him silent. He felt the weight of her words, heavy yet kind. As the night went on, Illyra asked him to tell her about his family, his childhood, the dreams he had left behind. At first, Tamash hesitated. These were not stories he often shared. But her eyes were patient, waiting without pressure. And so he spoke of the small village where he grew up, of his mother's gentle songs, of his father's quiet strength, of the books that had carried him away from narrow fields into wide thoughts. When he finished, Ilora's expression was different. There was a softness, almost sorrow, in her gaze. "I envy you," she said. "Envy me? Why?" Tomasz asked. "Because you carry memories that are heavy and warm at the same time. My people do not keep such memories. We do not sing, or dream, or tell stories to children. We do not risk pain, and so, we do not hold joy either." Tomasz felt a sudden ache for her. To imagine a life without songs, without shared stories, without laughter, it seemed too empty. "But now," he said gently, "you are learning. You are not like them anymore." Ilora's lips curved into a faint smile. "Perhaps. But it is you who is teaching me, even without meaning to." The words filled Tomasz with quiet pride and fear all at once. He had never imagined himself as someone who could teach a traveler from the stars about the meaning of life. And yet, here they stood, under the same moon, hearts moving closer in ways neither could deny. The silence between them grew heavy, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that carried more than words could say. Tomasz found his hand resting on the railing only a breath away from hers. He did not move closer, but the nearness was enough to send warmth through him. "Ilora," he said softly, "are you afraid? Of what your people will say if they know?" Her eyes lowered. "Yes. But for the first time, I feel something stronger than fear. I feel drawn, here. To this balcony. To these nights. To you." Tomasz's heart beat faster, and he forced himself to breathe slowly. He wanted to say more, to tell her what was rising inside him, but he held back. Instead, he nodded. "Then let us keep meeting. No matter what the stars think." Ilora's smile returned, small but true. "Yes. Let us keep meeting." The night deepened, the moon casting silver across their faces. Neither spoke again, yet everything was said. And though no vow was spoken, the balcony itself seemed to hold their promise that hearts, once drawn together, carry their own gravity, stronger than distance, stronger even than fear. The following nights carried a different weight. Tomasz could sense it even before Ilora spoke. Her presence was the same, graceful, calm, always watching the moon with quiet wonder, but her eyes carried a shadow. On one such night, when the valley below was covered in mist and the air felt heavy with silence, Tomasz finally asked, "Ilora, what troubles you?" She did not answer at once. Her hands rested on the railing, fingers tightening as though she held something invisible. Finally, she whispered, "My people know." Tomasz's chest tightened. "Know what?" "That I am no longer only observing," she said, her voice low. "They have seen how much I speak with you, how much I feel when I should not feel at all. They sent a message tonight. They told me it is dangerous to remain here." The word stung. Tomasz gripped the railing. "Dangerous? To speak with me? To stand here?" "Not dangerous for me," Ilora said, turning her gaze to him, "but for the mission. My people fear that I will not return the same. That I will choose this world over theirs." Her confession left Tomasz silent. He had always known her presence was fragile, borrowed from a life beyond the stars. But hearing that it could be taken away so soon filled him with a sharp ache. At last, he asked, "And what will you do?" Ilora's eyes softened with sadness. "I do not know. If I obey, I must leave soon. If I refuse, I will lose everything I have known before. My place. My people. My duty. Tomasz turned away, staring at the mist below. His thoughts swirled. How could he ask her to stay? Who was he, a simple scholar, to hold someone who carried the weight of the stars? Yet the thought of her leaving left a hollow space inside him that words could not fill. Illyra, he said slowly, you do not owe me anything. If you must go, I will not hold you back. She looked at him, startled. You would let me go so easily. His throat tightened, but he forced the words out. It is not about letting go. Love is not a chain. If I care for you, I must give you the choice. Even if that choice breaks me. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She turned her face away, her shoulders trembling slightly, though no tears fell. You're kind, she whispered. Always willing to suffer for love. That is what my people cannot understand. Why risk pain when you can choose safety? Because without risk, Tomasz said, his voice firm, there is no love at all. The silence stretched between them, heavier than ever before. The moon shone cold and bright, as if listening to their words. Finally, Illyra stepped closer, her cloak brushing against his arm. You speak as if you already know the pain. Tomasz nodded. I do. Everyone does. Loss is part of life. But we carry it. And somehow, it makes what we keep even more precious. Her eyes lingered on him, full of unspoken emotions. Tomasz, she said softly, you make me fear the thought of leaving more than I fear disobeying my people. His heart pounded. He wanted to reach for her, to hold her, but he stayed still. He knew the choice was hers. The night passed slowly, every moment heavy with the weight of their unspoken bond. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Illyra finally said, I will give my answer soon. But tonight, I only wanted you to know. Tomasz nodded, though his chest ached. Whatever you decide, Illyra, I will be grateful for these nights. They will stay with me, no matter what. Her lips curved into a sad smile. And they will stay with me too. As she turned to leave the balcony, Tomasz felt the world grow colder. The promise of her absence hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. And yet, deep inside, he knew this was not the end. Something within her eyes had told him her choice was not made yet. The moonlight faded, the sun rose, and Tomasz stood alone. But hope, fragile as a flame, still burned in his heart. The days after Illyra's confession passed slowly for Tomasz. The balcony no longer felt the same without her presence each night. He still came out, still leaned against the railing, and still looked up at the silver moon, but her absence was heavy. It pressed on him like a weight, leaving the night silent and hollow. He tried to keep busy. He read his books, walked through the gardens, and spoke with the few visitors who came to the old house. Yet nothing filled the space that Illyra had left. Each time the wind touched his face, he imagined it was her cloak brushing against him. Each time he saw the stars, he remembered the light in her eyes. On the third night, when the loneliness felt sharpest, Tomasz whispered into the night, Illyra, wherever you are, I hope you are safe. As if the moon had answered him, a shimmer of silver light appeared on the balcony. Slowly, gently, Illyra stepped into view. Tomasz froze, hardly daring to breathe. Illyra, her face was calm, but her eyes carried both sadness and determination. She walked closer, her steps quiet, until she stood beside him once again. I told them my choice, she said softly. Tomasz's heart raced. And what was it? Her gaze turned upward, toward the moon. I told them I cannot leave yet. That I have found something here worth more than duty. Worth more than safety. She turned back to him, her eyes shining. I told them I found you. For a long moment, Tomasz could not speak. The words caught in his throat. Relief, joy, and fear all tangled inside him. Finally, he whispered, Illyra, you gave up everything for me. She shook her head gently. Not for you. For us. There is a difference. My people see duty as the highest purpose. But tonight, I understood something new. Love can also be a purpose. And it is no less noble. Her words struck him deeply. He had never imagined that someone from the stars could feel the same longing, the same willingness to risk everything, that humans carried in their hearts. And yet here she stood, choosing him, choosing this fragile bond they had built under the moonlight. Tomasz reached for her hand, hesitating before their fingers touched. When she did not pull away, he closed his hand gently around hers. Her skin was cool and soft, almost like starlight itself, yet the warmth of life pulsed within it. Illyra, he said, his voice steady now, whatever happens, you will not face it alone. If your people reject you, if they close their doors to you, you will still have a home here. With me. Her lips trembled into a smile. Do you know what you are offering, Tomasz? To carry the weight of someone who belongs to another world. I do, he answered without hesitation. But love does not count the cost. It accepts the weight and still chooses to carry it. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time, she allowed a tear to fall. It caught the moonlight, shining like a star before it vanished. She leaned closer, her voice barely more than a breath. Then tonight, let me belong to this world, if only for as long as I can. The night wrapped around them in silence, but it was no longer hollow. It was full of a bond that no order, no command, no distant authority could break. Tomasz felt her presence settle in his heart, not as a visitor, but as someone who had chosen to stay. The hours passed unnoticed as they spoke of dreams and futures, of what might come and what might be lost. They spoke of simple things too, the sound of rivers, the scent of flowers, the beauty of sunrises. Each word was a thread, weaving their worlds together. When dawn finally brushed the sky with pale light, Illyra did not vanish. She still stood there, her hand in his, her choice made. For Tomasz, it was as if the first true morning had come into his life. And though he knew trials lay ahead, he also knew one truth above all, Illyra had chosen love, and that was stronger than fear. The days that followed were unlike any Tomasz had ever known. Each morning, he awoke with a quiet excitement, knowing that Illyra was still here, still choosing this world, still standing beside him on the balcony under the moon. Their bond had deepened into something steady and unshakable, yet fragile enough to remind them how precious it was. On the first night after her decision, they returned to their familiar spot. The balcony, once just stone and wood, had become a world of its own, a place of safety, conversation, and connection. The moon poured its silver light over the two of them, making the shadows soft and gentle. Illyra leaned against the railing, her gaze moving across the valley. I never imagined a place could feel so alive, she said. I have seen planets filled with perfect order, stars where everything obeyed rules, but none of them held this. None of them held hearts like humans do. Tomasz smiled, watching her. You see now why humans risk everything for love. Why we laugh, cry, and hope so fiercely. She turned to him, her eyes shining. Yes. And I feel it now. Not as an observer, but as one who belongs. I feel joy, fear, sadness, and hope all at once. It is exhausting, and wonderful. They spoke for hours, sharing stories of the days they had spent together, of moments they had noticed in each other, and of dreams they hoped to pursue. They laughed quietly, their hands brushing together, and sometimes just sat in comfortable silence, letting the moonlight fill the space between them. As weeks passed, the city below seemed smaller, as if their world had expanded to include only the balcony, the mountains, and each other. Illyra learned more about human life, about music, poetry, laughter, and the unexplainable courage people carried in their hearts. Tomasz, in turn, learned from her a new patience, a deeper understanding of the fragility and beauty of connection. One evening, Tomasz brought a small notebook he had kept hidden. "I have written down things," he said quietly. "Things I noticed in our talks, moments I do not want to forget." Illyra took it gently, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper. She opened it, reading quietly. Her lips curved into a soft smile. "You treasure small things," she said. "Even words written on paper can hold power." "Yes," Tomasz said. "They remind us of what matters. And you matter, more than anything." For a long moment, neither spoke. The moon cast its glow over them, and the stars above seemed to shine just a little brighter, reflecting the bond that had grown between worlds. Illyra placed her hand over his. "Tomasz," she whispered, "I have been taught to follow rules, to obey my people, to observe and report. But I have learned something stronger. The human heart, it can guide us better than any rule. It teaches loyalty, courage, and love. And now, I am not afraid to follow it." Tomasz felt his chest tighten, a wave of emotion rolling over him. "Then we will face the world together," he said softly. "Whatever comes, we face it as one." She nodded, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. "Together," she repeated. The balcony grew quiet, yet the silence was full. Full of promises, full of shared strength, full of a love that bridged two very different worlds. In the nights that followed, they often stood there, hand in hand, looking at the moon and the valley below. They spoke of simple joys, flowers in the garden, the scent of fresh rain, the songs of the river flowing into the mountains. And in those small things, they found the extraordinary. For Tomasz, the greatest lesson was clear: the human spirit could inspire even a traveler from the stars to feel deeply, to risk, to hope, and to belong. For Illyra, the lesson was equally profound: humans carried a courage and warmth that could not be measured by order, distance, or even time. And when one chose to embrace it, even the vastness of the universe could feel like home. Under the silver moonlight, on the balcony that had witnessed the beginning of their bond, Tomasz and Illyra stood together. The night was quiet, the stars endless, and their hearts fully open. It was not just a balcony anymore. It was a bridge, a world, a home. And as they looked into each other's eyes, the silent truth was simple yet powerful: love, courage, and the human heart could change everything, even the course of worlds. And so, their story continued, not as an observer and a scholar, not as an alien and a human, but as two souls drawn together by something far stronger than fear, far stronger than duty, the enduring power of love.